11 a.m. in Douala, Cameroon. You're watching the papers on Canal the English broadcast from Douala, Cameroon. My name is Gladys Ambodima. This morning we begin with the French daily La Nouvelle Expression that captions on the National Assembly and curiosity and questions surrounding the fire incident at the National Assembly that was last week, or Thursday last week in Yaoundé. The French daily tells us that the investigations carried out following the incident proved several causes to the fire. It should be noted that a short circuit was identified as the primary cause of the incident that caused enormous damage at the National Assembly building in Guakile, Yaoundé in Cameroon. There are talks of a budget allocation for the maintenance of the building. Officials in charge of maintenance, the fire security system, the quality of material used, the supply water system at the National Assembly building in case of such an incident, amongst other causes. The paper writes that the judicial police has said even if the fire was accidental, several factors must have contributed and several persons will be held accountable for the incident. You have the details on page 10 of today's edition of La Nouvelle Expression, where the paper equally questioned the silence of the head of state ever since the incident occurred. You have all that in today's edition of La Nouvelle Expression. Then the paper is equally interested, or comes back to the incident at the University of Douala and writes that activities there have been paralyzed. This time around, lecturers have deserted the school campus or lecture halls and amphitheaters to denounce what the term deplorable working conditions. La Nouvelle Expression reports that the lecturers are against the absence of offices for lecturers since the creation of the university, lack of potable water, electricity, and functioning toilets. They are equally against the non-respect of their insurance policy. You have the details on that in this edition of La Nouvelle Expression. Then we have the resignation of Zimbabwe President Robert Mugabe that equally makes news in today's edition of La Nouvelle Expression. The paper says the Zimbabwean President Mugabe Robert Gabriel has finally resigned after ruling the country for 37 years. La Nouvelle Expression reports that he signed the letter to that effect yesterday, November 21, 2017, an act which the French daily La Nouvelle Expression says will serve as a lesson to many African head of states who cling onto power. You have the details on that on page 12 of the French daily La Nouvelle Expression. Then let's move over to L'Oeil du Sahel, the tri-weekly newspaper, which talks about blackout in the Grand Nord, which it says there will be blackout at least twice every week. And according to the paper, Energy of Cameroon, Eneo, has announced that it will supply electricity to these regions 2 or 3 days in a week. The energy distribution company says in the release that the drop in water level in the Lagdo electricity dam account for the situation. You have the details on page 4 of L'Oeil du Sahel. Then the same paper is equally interested in the University of Ngaoundéré in the Adamawa region and says students of the CEMAC zone in the area or in this institution are still being demanded their residence permit despite free circulation within the CEMAC zone that has gone into force. According to L'Oeil du Sahel, Chadian students are mostly affected. Read the reasons why on page 11 of the tri-weekly L'Oeil du Sahel. Then in Kolofata in the far north region of Cameroon, an explosion from a suicide bomber has left 5 persons dead and caused others injured. The paper says the incident occurred on Monday, November 21, 2017. The target, according to L'Oeil du Sahel, was a market, but the suicide bomber was interrupted at a control point where he pretentiously told traders he wanted to sell his bag of beans, which rather contained a bomb. You have the details on that on page 3 of L'Oeil du Sahel. In the same paper, it tells us about Algeria and Nigeria, where some 250 Cameroonians from those countries, or Cameroonian migrants from Algeria and Niger, have been repatriated to Cameroon. They finally arrived thanks to the World Immigration Organization. Page 3 of L'Oeil du Sahel has details on that story. And then we have Informatin this morning, the French weekly or the French daily. It is interested in the 4th International Forum on Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises that is taking place in Cameroon's economic city, Douala. It opened yesterday under the auspices of the Minister of Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises, Laurent Sech Etudingbois, who told participants that SMEs are particularly being monitored by the head of state. You have the more on that on page 4 of the French daily Info Matin. Then the paper reports on Zimbabwe and tells us that Zimbabwe President Robert Mugabe has finally resigned and has left through the small door due to a woman. It says by trying to fashion his wife as successor, the old Bob in quote has finally been abandoned by his old friend with whom they fought for the country together. You have the details on that on page 12 of the French daily Info Matin. Then let's move over to the Guardian Post newspaper, which is equally interested in Zimbabwe. It says it is the end of the road for Zimbabwe President Robert Mugabe. It says Mugabe bows to pressure and resigns after 37 years of rule. It says yesterday the Zimbabwe's president speaker Jacob Mudenda announced the resignation in open session amidst thunderous applause from the legislator. A letter from Mr. Mugabe said that the decision was voluntary and that he had made it to allow a smooth transition of power in the country. The paper says the surprise announcement halted an impeachment hearing that had begun against him. Lawmakers roared in jubilation and people have since celebrated or have been celebrating in the streets of Zimbabwe. Mr. Mugabe is 93 and was until yesterday the world's oldest leader. You have the details on that on page 3 of the Guardian Post newspaper. Then the paper is interested at the University of Douala, where some lecturers have gone on strike. It says the teachers of the University of Douala have engaged on a 5-day strike in protest of their poor working conditions. The information was made known through a press release issued by the Littoral Regional Coordinator of the National Union of Teachers of Higher Education, SINES, Eyango Njombi Desmond. The strike action was started yesterday, November 21, will run until November 26, 2017. That article brings us to the end of today's edition of the papers on Canal English. Thanks for watching.